By the end of August 1963, in some places of the United States, the black man could not go to school where he chose, eat where he wished, build his home where it pleased him, or find jobs for which he was qualified. He had been insulted, beaten, jailed, drenched with water, chased by dogs. But he was coming to Washington, he said, to overcome violence by peaceful protest.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King.
Dr. King had started working on the whole idea of integration, and they came up with a law that said you could not bus a kid past a school to another school.
Right when they thought that integration was coming about, all of a sudden they built Thomas High. When we walked into Eva Thomas, it was like, wow.
I thought the school was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen.
Seeing the structure of the building, especially the gymnasium, it was just overwhelming. The teacher at Eva Thomas was unparalleled. Principal Gilbert, Mr. Dollar, Mr. Dudley, Miss Dudley.
We cared. I would say things to them like, guess what, we got a school. At last we got our school.
The Fulton County Board of Education decides to close Eva Thomas High School as a way to integrate that community.
They made it a point to close it in secret.
Well, here I am again, folks.
We're going, why? Why you want to close it?
And that was a brand new building. It hadn't even had a chance to get dirty. It was like, oh no, not on our watch. This wasn't gonna happen on our watch, okay?
Why are you here?
Well, we are here because we're protesting the closing of the school.
How long do you plan to stay here?
Well, as long as we feel it's necessary.
What really makes Eva Thomas an amazing situation is that the leadership is a whole bunch of young kids who are saying, we understand the impact of nonviolent, peaceful protest.
Meanwhile, the students here say they'll boycott the first day of school tomorrow.
Our kids are outspoken, so I'm very encouraged that we have 15 and 16-year-olds are saying, this is not right.
When you don't have a voice, your voice being your vote, you continue to have people in office that do not advocate for you, that do not look like you, that do not progress your interest.
Unlike Eva Thomas Day, the Board of Education is elected, and today we are made up of 7 brilliant women.
With all that they went through to get the school and to get a name on the school, the name is not there anymore. Do you know that? It didn't exist, but it did exist.
The interesting thing about College Park is it sits right next to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. So the airport had a big influence on how College Park was shaped. But even into the 60s, College Park was still a very segregated town. There were clear boundaries. Not all of them were physical, but there were some. We have the golf course on one side and Main Street on the other side defined the African American community from the white community.
The square mile was the area of College Park where black people lived. Most of the people were pretty poor at that time, and we just didn't expect much and didn't have much and didn't realize we didn't have much. You didn't have any interaction with the other race, whites, unless you worked for them. Unless you were pushing a lawnmower, we never went on that side. We never went across the track. We could eat out of the restaurants, but we couldn't go in through the front door. We'd have to let them serve us out of the back doors.
really all over the country. It was very, very dangerous for black people at that time. The Ku Klux Klan was very real to us. The threat of being eliminated.
And we could be up at the 10-cent store on Main Street, and the Klan would just come have their parades. It was like everybody knew, just stay in your place. It's a little community, but you learn strength, courage, determination.
All of us went to the same churches, so there were no strangers. When they said a whole village raises a child, that was true. Because if the neighbor down the street caught you doing something, they told your mom you got whippings.
Some of the places that was there in the neighborhood, Price Barbershop, Greer's Cab, Brady's Gym, especially Brady's Gym. Mr. and Mr. Brady were the cornerstone of College Park. They ran the gym. I can remember we had what you call day camp, and some of the kids didn't have lunch. Mr. Brady and Miss Bessie would make sure that each kid was fed before they left that gym. Mr. Brady was the daddy that I didn't have.
There was no air conditioning. It's nice over here now. A lot of parents, they end up being like a babysitter center for them. Brady and his staff were such good people that this was a safe place to go.
I have some very sad news for all of you, and that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee.
When Dr. King was assassinated, we were at Brady's gym and everything stopped. Somebody dropped a pin, you could hear it. Tears flowing. It just cut through you like a knife.
In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court decided in Brown versus Board of Education that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. It really wasn't until a decade later, with the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, something Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called the Second Emancipation. This made segregation in all public spaces pretty much illegal. But in the state of Georgia, segregation was built into state law. Therefore, it was illegal for any school district to pair students of different races together. So that became a collision right there.
There was a considerable amount of resistance in the South to this idea of integrating. And what you see in a lot of instances is people trying to now do what Plessy versus Ferguson said to do in 1896, which was separate but equal, separate facilities, but bringing them up to equal standards.
Separate but equal really wasn't separate but equal. I cannot remember the time in high school that I had a new textbook.
And of course, our textbooks were definitely the C. Jane Run, and the only thing black in there was the dog Spot.
We would get on buses and ride right past College Park High School to South Fulton and East Point. But right when the integration was coming about, whereas that you couldn't pass a school to get to another school, all of a sudden they built Thomas High.
They built Eva Thomas in our community in order to prevent us from going to the all-white high school in College Park.
Eva Thomas technically was not even supposed to open as a black school per the federal government.
So it was really built in a few months. It went up quick.
The They named it after Miss Eva Thomas, a community leader. She was a former school teacher, educator.
I did know Miss Eva Louise Thomas. She was the one that was encouraging us to go to school. And
I remember we were so excited, and named after a black woman.
I remember watching it being built, but in phases. In fact, that's all we talked about. We would walk over to the site. They had the fence up, kind of like the fence that's there now, and we would stand and watch them build each phase. It was a huge building. We had windows. I mean, they talk about natural light. We had a green space with a huge magnolia tree. And we would go out there and sit down and have lunch and stuff like that.
Eva Thomas was like a breath of fresh air. You know, new bathrooms, new classrooms, and it was great.
It was just so pretty and clean, and our science lab. We had really nice equipment because it was all brand new. We were able to select our mascot and our school colors. We started going through dictionaries trying to get the fiercest looking animal we could, and we came up with the Bearcats. Go figure.
The basketball program was outstanding. Everybody knew about the athletes of Eva Thomas High School. You know, they were just gladiators.
First year we had basketball. We weren't allowed to play against white teams. But fortunately, we were pretty good. Yeah, we won a lot of games down there.
My coach's name was Donald Dollar. He was a grinder. And during that time, living in College Park, we knew how to win. We had a lot of heart. 1968-69 Bearcats, champions. Charles Deal, he was a man portion. We were small, but we had a lot of athleticism. I can remember going through that 69 season, we lost one game. And while going down to the tournament in Macon Coliseum, there was a lot of hostility from Caucasian people, calling us names, the N-word. But our focus was, we're gonna come into this gym, and we're gonna take it from you. And when we get through, you're gonna remember Eva Thomas High School. And that's what we did. We was on a mission. Michael Majid, point guard, extraordinaire. The teachers at Eva Thomas were unparalleled.
I taught mathematics.
I taught industrial arts.
We had a real thing going at Eva Thomas. We were family. We were sponsoring our kids in anything they wanted to do. And the parents couldn't afford it, we did it for them.
My greatest moment at Eva Thomas was when I met my wife.
I can remember one teacher named Miss Moore. I didn't know too much about talent as far as musical, the theater. She could have went to any other school, but she told Eva Thomas. Thank God for her.
In the summer of 1969, the federal government is putting all their pressure on Fulton County to integrate its schools. I mean, it's now or never. You're gonna lose your funds. So the Fulton County Board of Education, with College Park almost the last place that the integration has not taken place, decides to close Eva Thomas High School and scatter that student population to surrounding schools that are predominantly white.
That meant that we were all gonna be siphoned off to the surrounding white schools so that they could continue to get the federal dollars.
When I found out that they was closing the school, it was just like somebody had hit me in the head with a brick or something.
Not a school that is brand new, still smells brand new.
That was a crushing blow. not only to me, but to our community.
Not a school that just won state championship as a basketball team.
They're closing the school, which they just opened up a few years ago. I said, this doesn't make sense.
A school that is responsible for top-notch academics.
You built them a school to keep them away from your children, and now you still don't think they're good enough, so you want to divvy them out.
Now they want us to go to a school right up the street where all those years we couldn't.
Our community said, no, that's not going to happen.
Well, they're going to close Eva Thomas. Oh, no, not on our watch. This wasn't going to happen on our watch, okay?
So when they get the news that their school is about to close, they immediately start to hatch this idea, and they decide to take action. This takes many shapes. They decide to occupy their school and to not let it be closed. They want to stay in it.
And Mr. Dollar helped us gain entry into the school. We decided that we were just going to sit in at first and then sleep in. I mean, we didn't want to leave it because we were really afraid that they were just going to bulldoze it. We didn't know what the closing meant.
Keep in mind, the parents are behind the student demonstrations just as much. And so they decide to get a petition together to keep the school open. And they actually march miles away to nearby East Point, where the Fulton County Board of Education office is, and present this petition to the Superintendent Paul D. West.
The students say that they want to stay at Eva Thomas. They don't see why they should be bused to 3 or 4 other schools in the area.
That's exactly right, and we have explained to them that that is not the choosing of the Board of Education, that the superintendent made 3 trips to Washington to try to avoid closing it.
The Board of Education discloses that it's the federal government that told them to close Eva Thomas High School. We know now that they did make that decision on their own, that the federal government gave them 3 options. Only one of them was closing Eva Thomas High School, and yet that's the one the Fulton Board selected.
When we look at the sit-in and the protest, we see students holding signs that say, "Socket to West, Black Power," being very clear about institutions in their community that they felt belonged to them. And so what we see is not a protest against integration. Really what we see is a protest about community.
How long do you students plan to continue these demonstrations?
As long as it takes the board to make that decision to open Eva Thomas High School.
And they've done a whole lot so far. I don't think they back down. The students aren't the only ones unhappy over the closing of the school.
Now they're occupying their school already, and it hasn't really gotten them results. So they're going to take this sit-in now to Dr. West's office. Some students got together and they decided to march all the way from College Park to downtown Atlanta. So this march is over several miles.
We all stayed in the same neighborhood. We thought it was fun because we were walking, we had a cause.
We had a song, and we were singing this song from here to downtown Atlanta.
We don't want to close our school, Paul D. Paul D. We don't want to close our school, West, West.
We went in the building. We were already told, be on your best behavior. We did a sit-in. They brought food in. We cleaned up, kept it nice and neat. And when they interviewed Dr. West, he proceeded to say we were very loud, nasty.
We were hoping to see him. We need him to talk to us, to tell us why. Nobody else could.
Why are you here?
My answer was,
we are here because we are protesting the closing of the school.
And I think the report asked, how long are you going to stay here, be here?
Well, as long as we feel it's necessary.
For as long as it takes. Things don't happen overnight, but for as long as it takes for them to get it right so they can make it right.
During the protests, the students were supported by the Atlanta NAACP. And their executive secretary, Mr. Morris Dillard, came and he said, the burden of desegregation must be borne by both blacks and whites. It was frustrating the amount of pressure that black families were under to integrate these spaces, and that spoke to a particular type of inequality and injustice. The driving force of the civil rights movement was this idea of equal opportunity, equal access, equal treatment.
Well, we all live black and white, trying to fight for equal rights. Keep your eyes on the prize.
This was happening really all over the country. People standing up for their rights in South Africa as well as here in America. It was always the students, it was the children who were out front. It happened here in the same way. We were a part of the civil rights movement.
Well, here I am again, folks.
Now, we were all in the gym. So Sheriff Stinchcomb came in and he said, I hate to have to tell you young folks this, but y'all got to get out of here. He said, now, we don't want no trouble. He said, are you going to listen to me? We said, yes. He said, are you going to go peacefully? No. At that time, Morris Dillard was with us, and he said, I want you all to get up and go lie on the floor. If they want to take us out, they're going to have to carry us out.
They got their victory because they kept their school open. The seniors of Eva Thomas High School could graduate from Eva Thomas High School. What many may not know is at the same time the protests were going on, there was a lawsuit filed against the school board by some attorneys from the NAACP to desegregate the area. That lawsuit would continue to the next year because the idea of keeping their school was the idea of keeping a segregated school. Of course, the school system would have to integrate, and that would mean students would have to be moved. Eva Thomas was eventually demolished.
They actually tore the building down.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that because I was older. I went over when they were doing the demolition, and I picked up a brick and took it home with me. And a couple of my classmates did the same thing.
We're looking at College Park Elementary. It's not the original building because they tore it down. But we still know where we are because the fence didn't change.
When you came to our gym to play, I would always be the first out that door out there, and I tell the opponent, ain't no sense y'all come here thinking y'all gonna win.
Hello?
You know, because we finna kick y'all butt and give back to you when you leave.
A lot of our teachers retired. But one thing about our teachers, I have to say, they were up front and straight with us, and they prepared us for what was gonna be out there.
That's my girl.
I would never forget Miss Dudley, Miss Emma Dudley. She said, you all take this as a learning experience. She said, as you're growing, you're learning. Never think that you're too old to learn.
Eva L. Thomas' name is not on a school. With all they did, Eva Thomas and all those people already gone, will be gone, and it didn't exist. But it did exist.
What I think about is what happened on that day Dr. King was assassinated. What happened when Eva L. Thomas was at the brink of closing, that actually left trauma in some way. We were teenagers, and it was just too much. But then you understand the assignment.
We actually did the very stuff that we were taught. We didn't have the violence, but the stigma was still there. You're second class, you'll never be better than us, and be grateful for whatever we give you.
I don't want you to give me anything. Just put me on the level playing ground.
Exactly.
And we'll go from there.
We shouldn't have been bused past College Park High to go to another city to attend a higher school. And then it was only open, what, 6 years?
6 years.
Eva Thomas should have never been built.
I hope this next generation understands that nobody's going to give you anything. And if it's worth fighting for, you need to open up your mouth and fight for it. Or as John Lewis said, don't make bad trouble, make good trouble.
So we look at the 1960s and all that it was in terms of civil rights. My name's Navion Stevens and I'm a senior at Creekside High School. The Supreme Court says you have this X amount of time to integrate. It does make us feel that Fulton County really was slow to move because they didn't really want to integrate as much as schools in the north would want to.
I know it's Fulton County, and then it's like, what, Board of Education?
Board of Education.
So I feel like they allowed the people that were on the board, they weren't really encouraging them to integrate and to become more progressive.
You're supposed to be integrating these schools and allowing the students to get the same education as the rest of the other students, but you're building the school for only black students and only white students. So it's kind of like you're not trying at all.
No. When you don't have a voice, your voice being your vote, you continue to have people in office that do not advocate for you, that do not look like you, that do not progress your interest. So if we're having a board that is set up of just white, conservative, Southern men, then the people who look like us are not at all really represented.
Our district is 70 miles long from top to bottom. I happen to represent areas that are in the city of East Point, College Park. I am Kimberly Dove, president of Fulton County School and District 6 representative. Let's talk about our strategic plan update. When we started building our schools, they always were part of a community. They have input on the physical building, the naming of the building, the mascot. Unlike Eva Thomas Day, our board, which happens to be 7 women, is elected to serve in the areas that they live in so that they represent those areas. It's important to tell the story and the history of Eva Thomas because in order to know where you're going, you have to understand where you came from.
The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky.
And that today we have new paths forward. And what's really amazing is when I get to observe student learning face to face and outside of a school setting.
Good morning, everyone. You're gathered here today because you represent Fulton County across the Atlanta Metro. So we're going to get your views on a few topics related to civil rights.
We can see with the increase in the Black Lives Matter movement a couple of years ago that there are still issues very relevant today.
Civil rights movements should always be here. Their impact should be measured across centuries.
America isn't really what we wanted it to be.
If I had one word to give to the youth of the day, I would say tolerance. Everybody has opinions, everybody has thoughts, everybody have a way of doing things.
And now more and more people, the party, liberal and conservative, they're becoming more polarized.
With the overturning of Roe v. Wade, that opened the floodgates for a bunch of things to be changed.
But I feel like sometimes we fall short on voting, one of the most powerful tools.
My advice for the next generation is to always have your ears in position for listening. And not just listening from the elders, but listening from on high.
Dr. King often said that I cannot be all that I can be until you are all that you can be.
I had no idea that I was to be a leader, but they saw it in me.
And we have to actively make the decision to reach out, step out of your comfort zone, like be brave.
There was a time where we did not talk about activism at school. Our curriculum has changed, and so because we are developing their skills of discernment, our kids are outspoken around things that they see that are going well in their community and things that are not going well. And so they're not looking for teachers and parents to give them answers, right? They're just saying, what's the pathway? I'll go find my own answer.
You know, when you look back and think about integration, I think that it probably was expected that it was going to be the balm that changed everything, but it wasn't. You know, it wasn't, because if you force any group of people to do something a certain way, and it becomes a way of life for them, and then you say, you have to now do it this way, then it changes something inside the person. The integration of the school system was not done properly. When it had to be forced, there were so many things that were erased that were important. You lose a certain identity and it makes you feel somewhat inadequate. And there is this continued struggle after that to prove your worth.
This is the rim from our high school, Eva Thomas.
There were so many casualties. Casualties of promise, casualties of hope, casualties of self-worth. When you lose that, it takes a long time to build that back up. But I am so glad and so proud to have been a Bearcat.